Hi guys, and welcome back to Is It Worth It reviews. After a short pause in the beginning of the year, I'm back and we'll start off with the xDuoo XD05 Pro. This is, I cannot say it's portable, but it can be if you wish it to be. You can certainly carry it around, even though it's quite heavy and chunky. It has huge battery inside, but it can also be used as any other desktop product with the power supply and everything. You do not have to rely on the internal battery. It's a DAC, and it also has a headphone amplifier. It costs $799. That's not a small price, so it better be good. But just before we talk about its performance, let's go through some basics and connectivity first. In the front, you can see we have two analog headphone outputs. One of them, the smaller one, is actually 4.4 millimeters Pentacon, that's balanced output, and this is a truly balanced, truly differential design. The bigger one is 6.35 millimeters single-ended output. The important thing to say here is that even single-ended out is plenty powerful. I never felt, no matter what headphones I attached to it, that I need or I desire more power. Then in the back you can see several different inputs and outputs. From the left to right, you can see first coaxial and optical input. This is a combined inlet, and both optical and coaxial are in their mini form, meaning 3.5 millimeters jack for the coaxial cable and mini optical input. Next to it is AES input, then USB-C input. Then we have analog auxiliary input and output, so you can either use it as input or as the output. And when you want to use XD05 Pro as a DAC only, without using its headphone amp, this is the output to use. Then next to it is balanced 4.4 millimeters analog, once again combined input and output. Then next in the line is another USB-C socket, which serves for charging or simply power supply this time. And this is where things get interesting. As you can see completely on the right, there is a switch that says charge, external power supply or battery. And especially interesting to me is this middle position, the selection of external power supply. When this one is enabled, you can attach external power supply and it will not charge the battery. And that's, in my opinion, really great because the current, the power supply, does not go through the battery but bypasses it, which means that when it's home and in a desktop mode, you can preserve battery life. Now, most controls are located on the side and you have to hold power on button to power it on. And you can see that once it is powered on, we have some LED lighting here on the sides, and then we have OLED display on top with some important information and menus and settings too. But there is a small OLED display in front inside of the knob too that will show you the volume, but that will also be shown on this bigger display. And why is this done? I'm not completely sure, but I think it can be useful in some certain situations where you're looking at the unit from the front and it's not convenient for you to look at this upper display so you can see the volume at least. Now it's one truly unique and interesting part of this device. If you look at the bottom of the unit, you'll see two different lids on two sides of the unit. And underneath one of these are located operational amplifiers. By default, Texas Instrument 1620, I believe, I'll put that on the screen, is slotted here. But you also get a separate pair of 49720 or something like that. I'll once again put that on the screen. So you can change op amps And that way you can influence the tonality, the overall sound signature. And of course, you can use any other op-amps that fit the specification needed. Then under this other lid on the other side, there is a small plate, and you can see that ESS Sabre 9039S Pro is written on it, meaning that this one comes with a flagship Sabre DAC chip. But just like op-amps, this is also modular. So you can just slot out this plate and exchange it with either AKM, once again flagship AKM DAC chip, or ROHM. I don't know the model for that one, ROHM DAC chip. I'll put both of these on the screen. So you can choose between 3 different DAC chips, and it's easy to change them. It's modular. The thing to notice here is that it comes factory supplied with this Sabre one, which is, as I said, flagship grade. And if you want to try one of these other 2, you have to purchase them separately. I believe that at the moment of filming this video, AKM is $199 and this ROHM is $149. But hey, adaptability of xDuoo Pro doesn't end there. So, for example, you can choose 3 different modes of operation, which is Eco, and that one is suitable for less consumption and less gain, that is great for sensitive in-ears. Then Normal, that is suitable for most headphones, and then Turbo, that is suitable for high impedance, voltage-hungry headphones. And I hope I remembered to mention everything, because this thing has so many features that I probably missed some. Actually, I will add one about power supply and how to use it, and that's also a very interesting thing that once again influences the sound, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. For now, let's talk about how it sounds in its factory default state with the Sabre DAC module. I started listening to xDuoo Pro and immediately, just in isolation, listening to this device alone, I was really happy with how it sounds. I connected my favorite planars, Gold Planar GL2000s, and sound was just right from the beginning. Detail retrieval, there's plenty of it. Every small nuance, everything happening in the recording, I can hear it and it's there, and I don't feel like I'm lacking any information. Sound staging is more than decent. There's enough layering and space and just spatial information around my head. Tonality is also well balanced, well judged. There's plenty of bass, mid-range is rich and expressive, and high frequencies are well extended but not overcooked, not sharp or annoying in any way. If anything, there is a slight richness to the overall tone timbre, but I'll talk about that more when we come to comparisons. One thing that I also noticed is that dynamics are great. General liveliness and snappiness is really good. This is one engaging sounding amplifier. And then I wanted to change the op-amps from 1620 to these 49720, and that has a pretty noticeable impact on the overall sound. So everything became more forward, and edges became cleaner and more energetic, crisper, but overall tone timbre and tone richness became less rich and less warm. And I have to say that this choice is not easy. If you like technically inclined, crisp, clean on the edges, modern kind of sound, you might prefer this second pair. But if you like something that's smoother and tonally richer and slightly warmer, this 1620 pair that is in there by default is probably going to be your preference, and I slightly preferred them too. But that said, how does XD05 Pro compares to other DAC and headphone amps and also other only DACs? Okay, let's start with two-in-ones, both a DAC and a headphone amp. And for that purpose, I first started by comparing it to Aune S9c, which is priced roughly the same at $700 and it's a desktop product, much bigger as you can see. And I was surprised to find out that overall sensation of power and just dynamics and how lively everything sounds is fully comparable. I'm using heavy loads, not so sensitive headphones that demand quite a bit of current, and it performs really nicely with really good dynamics and really good energy. And it was definitely on the same level with S9c in that regard. But when it actually comes to fine detail retrieval and that inner tone texture, XDuoo was actually better. It just has a richer tone timbre. It sounds tonally and harmonically richer than S9c, that is in a direct comparison slightly analytical. It's very clean sounding, great sounding, spacious and dynamic, but simply not as tonally rich as XD05 Pro. Then next I moved to Chord Mojo 2, which is actually a champion when it comes to that tone fullness and the richness, especially in the mid-range. And I was surprised to hear that XD05 was putting a really great fight in terms of just how rich mid-range sounds. Maybe Mojo 2 has a slight advantage in terms of that inner tone texture, but ever so slightly. But on the other hand, XD05 Pro is clearly a more spacious sounding. The soundstage is more 3D, it's more around you, whereas Mojo 2 sounds flatter. And the same thing is with dynamics, whereas XD05 Pro sounds very alive, very engaging, and it can go down and up with dynamic swings. Mojo 2 is much more dynamically flat or calm sounding, if you like euphemisms more than like real talk. But all in all, generally, to my ears, XD05 Pro on its headphone output is clearly more engaging, more powerful, cleaner sounding, more three-dimensional sounding DAC and a headphone amp than Mojo 2. Next, I moved to using it as a DAC only, using its auxiliary output, which is not controlled by this volume knob. So it's a fixed, I think, 2 volts output, DAC only. And I connected it to my room setup, and once again the impression was the same as it was when I started using it in isolation as a DAC and a headphone amp. There is nothing weird or quirky about that sound. It's revealing, good tonality, good tone timbre, it's a decent sound stage, and I immediately went to comparing it to several of the best standalone DACs that you can buy at that price point. One of them is Topping D70 Pro Octo, which is more affordable at $600, but it's as good as anything near that price. And in a direct comparison, these two showed to be equals. They perform in the same tier. Topping here might appear ever so slightly cleaner and crisper, especially when we talk about the leading edge of an instrument. But on the other hand, XD05 Pro appeared to be slightly warmer and slightly richer sounding. So if there is a sudden quick, clean pluck of a string, that might sound a little bit cleaner with topping. But if there is something like a trumpet or a saxophone, that will probably appear a bit more tonally fuller and richer over xDuoo Pro than over topping. And I believe that that boils down to personal preference and what you perceive to be cleaner sound. Also, of course, matching with the rest of your system. Because if you have a system that leans towards warmth, you might prefer topping. If, on the other hand, you have a system that leans toward being resolving or maybe slightly analytical or just neutral, you might prefer xDuoo Pro here. Anyway, equally good performing DACs, just slightly different. Then I once again compared it to Chord Mojo 2 as a DAC only. And story is a bit different here, because it appears that Mojo 2 is a better DAC than it is a headphone amp. Now, using them both only as DACs, it was obvious to me that Mojo 2 sounded even richer tonally and smoother and slightly warmer, especially in the mid-range. It has that beautifully rich mid-range. I will not say magical, but if you want to insert that word, feel free to use it for Mojo 2, because no other DAC at this price point sounds better in the mid-range. Jazz vocals, saxophones, trumpets, piano, that will all sound big and realistic and very detailed with thinner tone texture and just beautiful tonality with Mojo 2. With xDuoo Pro, it's close, but it's not really there. It's somewhere in between of that tone richness of Mojo 2 and topping. It's the middle ground of the two. But the thing is that xDuoo Pro actually sounds a little bit more energetic and a little bit more dynamic with fast-paced songs than Mojo 2. So you might prefer that. Just personally and my own preferences and tendencies, I would still choose Mojo 2 as a DAC only, but if I would to use them as headphone amps, or I would to use them both ways, I would go for xDuoo Pro because it has a superior headphone amp. The gap between these two as DACs may be something like this, but as amps, it's like this. So, like a complete package, I find xDuoo Pro to outperform Mojo 2. And now I'm going to talk about one last thing. Now, if you take a 12 volts, 3 amperes power supply, and I have hifi iPower X here, which is around 100 euros or US dollars, and you hook this to xDuoo Pro and you enable this external power supply mode on the back switch. The xDuoo Pro will enter a slightly different mode of operation. It will bias its internal transistors to work in Class A mode. That impacts the sound. The sound will become slightly warmer and slightly richer. And especially on the headphone output, that was more noticeable for me. Now, I was already really happy with its sound without this using the external power supply, just using the internal battery. But with this one, and with that Class A operation mode, everything became tonally richer. And just edges relaxed. They were even calmer and softer, but not in a negative way, not like losing resolution and information. It's just like losing that edge forward kind of character, but leaving all of the information and adding some warmth and a little bit more of tone texture. And after this review, I kept using it because my desktop is quite small. It has limited space, so I cannot use my favorite devices easily on it. For example, like just having a good DAC and Aune S9c Pro head amp that I reviewed, and it's fantastic. That would be like a big, huge stack of separates. Smaller stacks that are price comparable with this one, like let's say Topping E70 and L70, are no match for the sound fidelity of this one alone. The one device like Aune S9c, once again, it's not a match to this one performance-wise. Chord Mojo is not a match. Only some more expensive, pricier combinations and much bigger combinations can get you even more details and bigger sound stages. But if you limit yourself to these like $800–900 for a headphone setup, I don't know anything that sounds better than this one. And I'm really truly happy that xDuoo made it this way. At first, when I received it, I was like, wow, what is this? It looks cool like a kid imagined it. It has all kinds of lights and buttons and two displays, and it's modular. And I was like, yeah, it will lean heavily on those gimmicks, but it will probably not perform as well. That was my preconceived opinion that was completely wrong, because this thing sounds fantastic. So thanks to Shenzhen Audio for sending this one to me. I have to say that initially I didn't want to review it. I think I declined this review once because I'm so cramped and I have many products that we need to go through in these coming months. But at one moment I was like, what the hell, let's try one more device. And yeah, I'm really glad that I did, because as it looks right now, I think that I will keep using it with this external hifi power supply as my desktop setup. As I said, I do have some better ones, but they're much bigger, hotter, pricier, and it's just a great package, great performance in a compact size, and what can I say? I love it. And that would be all for today, guys. See you next time. Bye.